It's your girl, Dr. Jamila T. Davis, and you're tuning in for another episode of Social Justice in Action, where we bring community to the classroom. For those that don't know me, I'm Dr. Jamila T. Davis. This is Social Justice in Action. We are so excited about our special guests that we're going to have in the building today. You could clap it up ahead of time for them, but we have two sets of guests, right? So one, we have Dr. Bahia Muhammad from Howard University. Let's give it up for her. Second, we have the whole Until Freedom team. Clap it up for Until Freedom. I remember being federal prisoner number 59253-053, right? And I was on my bunk bed one day in the, actually, what was it? It was the West Virginia Federal Correctional Facility in Alderson. And one of the ladies was like, you know what? Yo, you got to go downstairs. I met this woman. She's amazing. I'm just like, listen, if you know anything about prison, you got to put on your prison boots and your uniform during hours. And I didn't feel like doing all of that. But then somebody else came up and they was like, you got to meet this sister. She's amazing. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to put my boots on. I'm going to put my uniform on. And I'm going to walk a half a mile, because literally that's what it was, to get to the auditorium to be able to see her. And I met the woman that I'm going to introduce you to today, Dr. Bahia Muhammad, and she was just a gem. One, she brightened my day. She spoke so much encouragement to me. Two, she just was about her business and her word. She told me that she ran a program for the children of incarcerated parents, and I put her in touch with my kids. She stayed connected with them while I was incarcerated. I remember calling home one day and my son telling me he spoke at some big university or something in Connecticut that Dr. Muhammad had him be a part of. And when I came home, she kept her word. She stayed in touch with me, and she was one of my biggest advocates that pushed me to get my PhD. So not only is she an activist and someone who's on the front lines doing amazing work for so many other people, she's my dear friend. So let's give it up for Dr. Bahia Muhammad.
I'm going to start with my slides. I do have an interactive kind of presentation from you all, just to make sure that we go through a lot of the information. And you're going to see that a lot of the terminology and the things that I use, you are used to seeing. And I wanted to make sure that I was putting in these sort of components so that we could rethink and flip the script. So that's what the presentation is called, flipping the script. This presentation really is about keeping it real, using innovative and creative strategies in order to have collective action. So we can go. When individuals think about an experience, oftentimes they're thinking about something that's out of the body. I always bring people back to the regular definition of what it ultimately means. It's just something that somebody can feel, right? And there's a lot of things that we do that individuals can ultimately feel. You would not believe how many people feel like, oh, I'm in professional development, I just need to be super professional. You could be professional in hood. So many people tell me, can I be a scholar instead? You know, a lot of my professors, they telling me that I'm kind of like ghetto with this. I'm like, it's cute. I like the way you wrote that sentence. All you need is to add a comma and then make sure you put a little quote right there, and that's how you dress it up on the paper. You don't have to leave out any pieces of yourself. You don't. And people don't have the palate for it, then they don't need to be ordering that. You order something else. But the way that you present and the way that you come about and being equally yoked as well as street smart is something that can go about. When you think about your skills building, I always want individuals to understand all of those simple kind of components. A lot of these sort of components you've heard before. The reason why I go to skills building is so that you can understand that it's block on block on block on block. You're building upon it. You know, yeah, I started off with a class that was living inside of a prison, right? And then I maneuver to a class with black millennials, white chiefs of police, where students have an opportunity to say whatever the hell they want to say in the way that they want to say it. Arm swinging, finger swinging. Why? Because I don't want them to be sloppy seconds on the side of the road. I want them to have emotional intelligence, and that's what all of my classes are about. I don't want you visiting a prison and going on the inside and falling in love with incarcerated individuals and hating your dad that's locked up. Oh, so it's cute in a class because you get in a grade, but now I'm retarding the school to prison pipeline. I'm contributing to that. I become the contribution to it if I allow my students to think that it's okay to go in and be like, oh, he's intellectual, but what about your father that's telling you don't mess with dude? And your dad, they ain't got nothing on your daddy. God gave you your daddy. This is just an experience in school. I started in Newark, went all the way down to Cumberland County, worked with children of incarcerated parents on death row in Uganda, Africa, working in Vietnam and in Bangkok and all across the nation to allow individuals to understand, regardless of the circumstances of incarceration, as children, you can still be phenomenal. You could still be great. And the strategy is I want to get in the building. I want to be able to get close to wardens. I want to be able to get close to the individuals that are leading departments of corrections. Now, if I come in there, power to the people, right, and I'm engaging in this kind of language that is not subliminal to the message of incarcerated individuals, you're going out the back door. You're not going to have a sleepover at nobody's prison with their children coming in. But guess what? I came in with a coloring book. And at the end of that movement, 25 children from across the nation had an opportunity to spend an entire week in a prison with their mothers, sleeping next to them, praying next to them, and I brought Howard University students in there to be of service, to decorate the visiting hall, to engage in that sort of a rhetoric. Why? Innovation and creativity. So as you are thinking about things, a lot of people feel you got to always run up and come through the front door. You could go through the back or the side or even climb in the window. Sometimes you could even be in the tree looking at what's going on so that you could tell the people on the ground, look, go to the right, go to the left. Everybody plays a position. Everybody plays a position. And when I went to Africa, working with children of incarcerated parents on death row, you will never see your parents out of the confines of a facility, period. But I still want you to hold your head up. Like, I still want you to live your life. I still want you to be excited. I still want you to have dreams. I still want you to live because you have life. And if God permitted that for the parent, it doesn't mean that you now live a sentence of death by incarceration or death by freedom. When I lost my mother, I really felt suicidal, right? My revolution during that time for my triplet sisters, for my brothers, for all of them, was for me to get dressed every morning, bismillah, and step out in faith. I just had to keep moving. Because if I didn't keep moving, then everybody would have been backed up behind me. Just like in a protest, if nobody moves, you just stuck right there. You got to move. You have to chant. You have to say certain things, right? It's the same way. When you think about a revolution, think about the self-revolution. Think about what needs to happen with you right now in your space to be able to even help other individuals. And one of the things that I always say to individuals is like, look, you can't forget that piece of innovation and creativity. That's what they depend on. They depend on us. You know what I mean when I'm saying us. They depend on us following the rules, following the regulations, doing whatever. As soon as you start getting innovative, people are looking. And that's why I put the coloring book out, because I wanted to be Yasin. I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want people watching me. That's why I went and taught my class in a prison. I don't want people standing outside of my class, oh, Dr. Muhammad, you was talking about this. You were saying this, but in the prison, you ain't bringing no cameras in. You're not bringing no phone in. You're not bringing no laptop in. You got to bring your brain in. And a lot of the times they say, what, black people don't read. Oh, you're going to read in my class. Because if they ban the book from coming in the facility, you're going to bring it in your brain. Checkmate.
Take that.
If you do not use your mind, all of this is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Mass incarceration in the black family. One step, you're going to take it inside of the prison with mothers and with fathers. That's how I got co-ed education in the prison. They ain't never had that before I came into the facilities. Women over there, men over there. Y'all ain't coming together. I had women, men, and children. We need the whole black family. Why? I created the class to do that. I'm not writing a policy to the Board of Education or to the Department of Corrections. At the end of the day, I'm going to create the class, come in the building, teach it for free, and now unified. Every class that came after mine, you got mothers, children, men, women, they all coming together. And what they doing, kicking it. There's a policy on the books inside of the facility that you cannot come together with your family. There was a woman inside of the facility downstairs. Her son was upstairs. It was like that for 6 years. They came together for the first time, alhamdulillah, in my class.
I know that's right.
That was a revolution. That is my protest. And if you watching, you watching. If you know, you know. If you don't, it's all good. A dream come true. The research study that I had conducted for 10 years just got ripped off of the pages of that dissertation, boom, thrown into real life. I got to live my wildest dreams out loud, you hear me? And it was called a course. It was called Mom Camp, M-O-M, Mothers of the Movement. At the end of the day, it gave us an opportunity in the visiting hall to be decorated for the kids. The kids got to come up and do a sleepover. Every part of the actual experience was a piece of my research. The children said, I want to know where my mom sleeps. We did a tour of the facility. They never taught the babies around the facility. Why? Because the kids was having nightmares, right? Like they were saying, like, I wonder where my mom is sleeping. I wonder if they go to the dentist. Do they have a library? That's why in the coloring book, A is for arrest, B is for bars, C is for commissary. A lot of the kids ask me, where is my mom shopping? And so on commissary, I have a Quran, I have a Bible, I have pencils, I have paper, I have all of these different things that they have there so that I can educate them, but at the same time move them to liberation, because they may be the individuals to burn the goddamn prisons down, right? It ain't me, but they may be. So I'm going to give them everything that they need to be able to move forward accordingly with their generation for what they're coming for. That's what a revolution and a movement is, and that's what triangulation is. In my slides that you all will receive a copy of, it talks about triangulating the movement. It talks about being able to connect the dots. It talks about knowing your story, and that is ultimately how our skills build.
So guys, let's give it up for Dr. Vahia Muhammad. Actually, her work inspired me from behind bars to create a nonprofit organization, Women Over Incarcerated. And when I came home to get to meet her, and today to be able to call her my family, and then her family is my family, and we've all kind of merged together and been able to do incredible work. So I want to give it up for the Until Freedom team.
So today I want to introduce and bring up some of the most brilliant minds, my friends, my family, the folks I do this work with, to have a deeper and more engaged conversation about some of the nuts and bolts around change, how we do it, how we think about it. So I want to bring up the other co-founders of Until Freedom, Linda Sarsour, my son Leonard, and Tamika Mallory.
My name is Tamika Mallory. As a part of Until Freedom, I think, one of the things that I'm really good at is sort of coming up with creative concepts for how we should approach our work, and then helping to build the coalitions by bringing people who are not the regular movement people into the conversation so that they can help us to fight the fight. Jamila really brought us into the space of taking our stories and the work that we're doing outside of buildings into spaces to try to educate and help to pass the baton. At one point when she was calling me, like, we need to go and speak to students, I'm like, I'm not an educator. It's not what I do. And I didn't really understand how important this is. And it was because of Jamila's persistence that at least I began to understand the importance of these spaces. And so I just want to thank her, first of all. Thank you, Jamila, for that.
My name is Linda. I'm a Palestinian Muslim American organizer from Brooklyn, New York. My job at Until Freedom is to implement Tamika's creative ideas. So Tamika comes up with the vision, and my job is to figure out how to make it work. And then Tamika does not take no for an answer. Everything got a plan, figure it out. And so my job is to help lead people to just figure it out.
My name is my son Leonard. I am a hip-hop artist and activist, a self-proclaimed raptivist. I came to this work through Tamika, who told me that my voice was needed in this work, and I never really seen that. Prior to me being involved, I didn't see somebody like me that represented what it was that I came from. I'm also formerly incarcerated after spending 7 out of a 7 to 14 year sentence for a crime that I actually didn't commit. And being incarcerated, I realized that it was so many people that had the same story that I had. So I went in when I was signed to a record label, to Def Jam Records in 1999, and then went to trial for a robbery case that I never committed, and end up being found guilty at trial. And throughout my sentence, I started to realize, how the injustice system actually worked. And, having the ability to utilize words, having the ability, having a platform, having a little bit of a notoriety prior to going to prison, I wanted to utilize that when I came back to inform people about what was going on in the injustice system. And then when I came home, I had never done activism before, because activism wasn't something I do. I'm from the Bronx, High Bridge section of the Bronx, and there you go, there you go, Soundview, and that's another part of it. I was Soundview and High Bridge. I lived in both parts, so I wasn't really well versed in activism. Didn't understand it. I knew Martin Luther King. I was a fan of Malcolm X. I loved Huey P. Newton, but I didn't really understand activism altogether, and I didn't really see a place for me because I wasn't this clean-cut person. So I didn't see how I can be of assistance, how my voice was useful, and Tomeka made me see how my voice was useful.
So one of the first things we want to discuss was, how do we decide what we do? Campaigns.
Tomeka tells us what to do.
Aside from that, well, how do you decide? No, how do you, in all seriousness, how does the ideas come forward? I mean, maybe the Breonna Taylor case is a good example for us to dive into about how we decided to work on that case.
The first thing is that I always look at, what's the ultimate goal? Like, where are we trying to go, right? So I would imagine that while Dr. King probably felt like the dogs that were biting people, biting black folks was bad, he wasn't necessarily going to get off of his voting rights mission to go address the dogs, right? Even though it's terrible. They're killing us with the dogs. Somebody needs to be dealing with that. But that wasn't necessarily his focus, because he was Civil Rights Act, he was Voting Rights Act. And I think Angelo does a good job, Attorney Pinto, of trying to always remind us of that, because sometimes, just because, especially me, I'm saying me, not all women, but this woman, I can be emotional about everything and just want to just do everything. But I think as we're getting older, at least for me, I'm recognizing that we do have to be more focused. And so I try to think about, what are the things that are really within our purview? What is it that we're really, really focused on? And then does this help us continue to exercise sort of our movement work in that area? And will it ultimately help us to present to the world why we need certain things done, whether it be legislation passed on a particular issue, whether it be, our concept of what it would look like to redistribute resources from policing to communities. How do we make those cases using the examples of things that's happening in the community? I think the other thing is, being a rapid response organization is where this sort of contradicts what I just said, because there are times when things come up and it's very clear that this is an issue that if we don't address it, if we allow it to die, then the movement in and of it, in some ways, loses its, you use the word today, but I'm not good, mojo, but that's not really, it's just not good. We can't allow this particular issue to get past us. We have to help and put our efforts together with whomever may be leading. And that's where sort of intersectional movement building comes in, because I may not be in the immigration space, but I can see whips at the border where Haitians are being beaten, and know that we can't allow something like that to happen on our watch without us stepping in and, being there and showing up. But I think the third thing is, in my life, I know that there is something that happens within me that just says this is the right thing to do, period. I can't do anything about it. I try to be and then of course, after we start doing it, I'm like, why did y'all go with me with this idea? Who is gonna do all this work? But I almost never lead us wrong.
Tamika had brought up the situation with Haiti. I'm Haitian American. Both of my parents are from Haiti. So that imagery was horrifying to watch. So seeing you and your team on the front lines, standing in solidarity with the Haitians meant so much to me and my family. My question is how do we hold like the administration accountable for this. You know, it seems like, they're definitely responsible and they haven't taken responsibility. It seems like a lot of us voted for people that didn't keep their promise. And as an advocate, activist, our main goal is to protect the Black community. And I just want to know, someone from that's boots on the ground, how do we hold these folks accountable? Because it just seems like it's business as usual.
I will say this, I learned somewhere along the line, and it may be that some great leader said this at one point, but that the fight for our freedom is constant. It's not like, unfortunately, Black folks, no matter where you come from, are not in a situation where, to your point, we can have big moments and then nothing, right? Like, we have to be in a constant state of fighting. I think where we run into issues is thinking that things are not happening just because it's not online, right? The organizations that were down at the border are very active. What's the Haitian Bridge? What's the Neon? I never get
It's a collective of Haitian elected officials.
Right, a collective of Haitian elected officials. They are doing the work right now, and they had been doing, the Haitian ambassador, they had been doing all of this work prior to the incident that happened at the border. That was just another day in the life, and probably a heightened day for them. And of course, it brought them a lot of resources and attention, but they've been doing the work, and they would love for people to show up and to continue to activate, but we are so addicted to reality TV. We're addicted to seeing something happening, everybody's running to it, and then as a result, it's like, okay, that's what we're attracted to. And I'm going to be honest in saying that that's what's actually killing some of us as activists, because we are constantly trying to find ways to keep it shiny for Black folks to show up.
For us, when we went to the border, we just got up and we saw those imagery and we just got up and went, and none of us are Haitian, because we were like, we're not about to let this happen, and then for us not to show up and say, you're going to follow us over there because you're going to see what we saw. What I will say to you is, from our perspective, what we've been able to do since we went to the border is that I've been leading, making sure that the people we saw at the border, that there a lot of them, as you know, are being shipped to different cities. So like, if you're at the border and you come in by immigration, they say to them, but do you know somebody to sit and do your case? Or somebody will say, well, I know this, my uncle's wife's sister's brother lives in Washington, D.C. or lives in Indianapolis. So volunteers were paying for people's tickets, Haitian migrants, to go to these different cities.
Right, there are things that we do routinely. Sometimes you pivot, you make adjustments, but there is a science to making or creating change, and there's a science to winning. So Linda, I'm going to turn over the mic to you to talk about some of that science. How do we pick our targets? How do we decide what kind of direct actions we do? And how does this science of organizing and movement building work?
And so when we think about a case, so when Tamika says, for example, here's a case, Breonna Taylor gets murdered in March, and then we don't find out about Breonna Taylor till May. So pretty much the entire country did not know that a Black woman who was an EMT worker was murdered until May of 2020, when she in fact was murdered on March 13th of 2020. And we were called to that case, so different ways, like Tamika said. Sometimes people call us. So we got a call about the Breonna Taylor case, like, hey, where's all the national activists at? Do you all know that woman got shot? Like, where's everybody? And so we went there to learn and get more information about that case. And then our question and how we get into these cases is, we got to figure out what our role is. Like, what's the goal? What are you trying to get here? You want to get cops fired? Maybe the campaign is you want to change a law. Is the campaign that the person wants to get a settlement from the city? Is the campaign that, this child was, bullied at a school and you want this teacher fired? Like, what is the thing that you want us to do? What is the end goal here, right? So I believe in my heart that George Floyd's family and Breonna Taylor's family got some of the biggest settlements in probably the history of these types of cases because of the type of visibility around their cases. So we're not the lawyers that are going to take you to do the civil suit, but I think the organizing around your case helps the government understand understand that they're accountable and this is going to be much more public than they want. That direct action gained national attention, right? Because it showed how we were able to outsmart the Louisville Metro Police Department.
And we got a felony.
The felonies was a part of that. I was going to get to that part. I was going to do the good stuff first. It got us national attention. Breonna's name was from coast to coast. People in South Africa were saying Breonna Taylor's name. We were dubbed the Louisville 87. That goes down in history where the 87 people got arrested outside the Attorney General's home.
Yeah, my question was, what troubles do y'all run into between, like, as far as the generational divide and, like, between, like, the youth and the elders? Like, what issues do y'all run into as far as organizing and, like, any solutions y'all might have and stuff like that? Yeah.
It's funny because we are the elders now. I mean, and that's just the reality. And so we are the elders in our movement because the young people that we're mentoring, like the Tiffany Loftons and Leslie Redmond and Stephen Green and New Paul and all, they're 20, they're like your age. And these are some badass activists. They're gonna move us right on out the way, and I'm completely fine with that. The people that came before us, oh no, honey, they held on to it until they was, they was on life support. Still, they on life support, holding that thing. I don't want to operate like that, and I'm always trying to check myself to ensure that I'm making space for younger people in the movement. And I'm hoping that because of the way we operate, that younger people will see it and that the word will get out, that we're trying to change the way that this hierarchy of movement, how it operates. And so it is difficult, though. But I will tell you the other piece for us, from our position, is that we sit at the feet of our elders. Right. That, to us, running to the elders to try to understand how we should move and what are these fights about. Dr. Muhammad and everybody here knows that each one of us has been through a different challenge where people have hit us with things publicly, right? And I went through a real traumatic experience. It was the elders whispering in my ear, you are not the first and you will not be the last, that helped me to keep out there and continue going, as this sister has said. Because otherwise, I would have folded and been finished, because I never even understood how people could just lie on you and it could become a 400-page story on the internet and you could have no control over it. But it was the elders that were in my ear. So what I suggest, and this may not actually be in the direction you want to travel, but I suggest that people always center themselves between the oldest person you can reach and the youngest person that you can reach in order for you to be effective in your own leadership, so you're pulling and learning from both sides, because I think that's what makes the most well-rounded leader.
My question is, she talked about like the different egos when you go into like different communities. I wanted to know, like, does it stagnate the process or does it take away from the work when the leaders when you can't get on one accord or you get resistance from the leaders within the community and they don't respect your expertise as far as what approach to take?
And our thing also always is like, you got to take your ego out of the work. It's not about you at the end of the day. You know, if it's about Breonna Taylor, if it's about Rayshard Brooks, if it's about Eric Garner, if it's about ending gun violence, like, it ain't about you. What about if you and me and her and she and he, guess what? That is what we need. And one of the reasons why a lot of our communities have not won in the way that we want is because we got all this infighting and I'm better than you, I know more than you, and you get all the money, I don't get nothing, and all this kind of questions. And guess what? Our opposition does not do that. You do not see our opposition infighting in the way that we see happen in our community. They don't blame each other. In fact, you could have a young kid that went to freaking Wisconsin from Illinois, literally killed protesters, and guess what? He raised $2 million for his fund. They stood behind him like that was their child. But then when, God forbid, our kid does something, they say, well, why was he over there and why did he do that? We say, and they, meaning the theys and the we's say, and we ask all these questions about our own people, but guess what? They don't do that. So the question is, how can we work together, and how could you respect what I know and I'm going to respect what you know? So the point is we make the effort to try to bring people on board, you know, to recognize what people bring to the table. But if they don't, if you can't beat us, you're going to end up joining us. And so what we learned is, at the end of the day, we're coming to do the work, and you are welcome to be part of the work. And at the end of the day, we have found that most times, even the people who are our biggest critics will join the work because they're like, yeah, these people know what they're doing. So just keep on, stay the course.
Y'all mentioned something about boots on the ground earlier, right? What's y'all, because a lot of people take that title and run with it, like, you know, what's y'all a strong definition, man, of boots on the ground out here?
I mean, I think boots on the ground is pretty much easy to see, because if somebody's boots on the ground in the community, you can see that. Work speaks for itself. Like, I don't have to tell you I'm boots on the ground. Like, where I work at, we outside. Like, everybody says we outside. Like, we literally outside. You go to the community, you ask the people in the community. When you see anything that's going on in the community, we making sure that we are visible. We're utilizing our platforms. We're utilizing our voices. We're utilizing our resources. We're doing everything possible. Whenever there is something that needs to be done that is within our bandwidth and what is our expertise, and we're able to contribute, we're boots on the ground.
Tamika Mallory has a special treat for you all, so she'll tell you about it.
Oh, you know what, Jamila, you are just a lot of work, honey. She be making us do work. So you guys know I wrote a book. Yeah. And it's called State of Emergency. And I'm really, really super duper proud of it, because I wrote this book while being in Louisville, Kentucky, while police officers were around our homes. There were helicopters following us. It was so much happening. We were doing all of the protesting, and still they would say, you got to pull away to go sit down for 4 hours and finish this book. And so I'm really, really proud of the work that's in here, and I hope that all of you will take a copy and read the book.
And I got a little part.
My
Linda
son
got
has a part. Linda
Angelo
has a part.
got a little part.
Angelo has a piece in it. And the foreword of this book is really, really special, because it's a conversation between Dr. Angela Davis and Cardi B. And there were people, I think we can pass them out, right? Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of people who were like, why would you put the two of them together in a social justice book? But if you read the conversation that they're having, where Cardi is asking Dr. Davis, since I look the way I look and I don't have all the words and I'm not like the trained movement expert, is there room for me next to you at the table to fight for justice? And Dr. Davis takes the time to respond to her and to encourage her to stay involved. And so it's a real powerful book, if I may say so myself. So please take State of Emergency, read it, and give me some feedback, all right? Thank y'all.
Again, for those that don't know, it's your girl, Dr. Jamila T. Davis, and this is Social Justice in Action, and you already know what it is. It's going down.